In the heart of the Appalachian jungle, a platoon of soldiers entered, expecting silence. But what they found was not silence. It was whispers in the dark, eyes that glowed without bodies, and shadows that hunted them like prey. This is not just a war story. This is the night soldiers witnessed something paranormal, and only one lived to tell. The helicopter blades tore through the humid Appalachian night, the steady thrum echoing over an endless sprawl of trees. Inside, the soldiers sat rigid, eyes fixed on the rolling expanse below. From above, the jungle looked calm, almost serene, a vast sea of green. But no one trusted what they saw. Private Miller wiped the sweat off his forehead and leaned toward the window. "Looks endless," he muttered. Sergeant Adams shot him a sharp glance. "Stay focused. Just another training op. Nothing more." But the doubt in his tone gave him away. Even Adams didn't believe it. The Appalachian jungle was old, older than memory, and the locals spoke of it with hushed reverence. Few dared to tread far inside. Before deployment, an old man from the nearby town had warned them, his voice trembling. "That forest ain't normal. It keeps things inside, things that don't belong to this world." They had laughed it off then. Campfire superstition, backwoods nonsense. But as the helicopter descended into a misty clearing, the words resurfaced in their minds like a chill. The skids hit the ground with a heavy thud. The air was thick, damp, rich with moss and decay. Boots hit the soil, sinking slightly into the wet earth. Instantly, the jungle swallowed them in sound, birds shrieking overhead, insects buzzing in a constant electric hum, branches groaning under the restless wind. The place was alive, too alive. Captain Harris raised his hand. "We set base camp 2 clicks west, tight formation, no stragglers." They moved into the trees, rifles up, the weight of their backs grinding into their shoulders. The deeper they went, the darker it became. Massive trunks choked in vines rose around them, their branches knitting together overhead until sunlight broke into thin dying shafts. The floor was cast in a dim twilight, the kind that never lifted. Private Jackson muttered, "Feels like the trees are watching us." Doyle smirked, though his voice was quieter than usual. "Relax, rookie. They're trees. What's next? You gonna say they talk?" But no one laughed. The hours dragged. Sweat burned their eyes. Boots sank into mud, every step heavier than the last. And then something shifted. The noise faded. First the birds, then the insects. By the time they stopped for a breather, the jungle was silent. No buzzing, no cries, not even wind. Miller swallowed. "Why is it so quiet?" Harris scanned the undergrowth, jaw tense. "Stay sharp. Could be a predator." But it didn't feel like a predator. It felt unnatural, like the silence itself had weight, like the forest was holding its breath. A branch cracked. Every rifle swung toward the sound, barrels cutting into the gloom. Nothing, just still trees and crawling mist. Another crack, closer this time. "Maybe a deer?" Doyle whispered, but his voice cracked. He knew better. Then static hissed through the air. Jackson's radio screamed with white noise, sudden and jagged. He ripped it off his vest, slapping it in panic. "What the hell? It's dead, it's not..." The static grew louder, filling the silence with a jagged chorus of broken whispers. Voices tried to claw their way through, sharp and distant. "Leave. Now." Every soldier froze. Miller's face drained of color. Did that just say something?" "Radio's off," Harris snapped. "Move out." But as they pushed forward, the forest shifted around them. The trail they'd left behind looked the same as the one ahead. The trees were identical, the path repeating. It was as though the jungle had turned in on itself, folding them inside. No one dared to speak it out loud, but the truth settled cold in their bones. They weren't alone. The sun dipped behind the mountains, bleeding the sky into darkness as the Appalachian jungle closed in around the soldiers. They had been walking for hours, yet the forest never changed. Every tree seemed identical, towering trunks strangled with vines, roots sprawling like veins across the earth. Sergeant Adams studied his compass again, the needle spinning lazily in circles. "Sir, this doesn't make sense," he muttered. "We've been heading west the whole time, but this thing's dead." Captain Harris snatched it, frowned, and shoved it back. "Keep moving. GPS will pick up once we're clear of the canopy. Stay tight." But the GPS stayed silent. The canopy never broke. Miller dragged his boots through the damp soil, sweat dripping down his temples. "Feels like we're walking in circles." Jackson shot him a sharp look. "Don't say that. Don't even think it." But the truth gnawed at them all. The forest seemed to bend and fold, swallowing their path until forward and backward were one and the same. Night crept in, and the air grew colder. Flashlights flickered on, their beams slicing through a fog that seemed to rise from the ground itself. It thickened fast, sliding around their boots and curling up their legs as if it were alive. "This fog," Doyle whispered. "Where the hell did it come from? It wasn't here 5 minutes ago." No one answered. The way it moved was wrong, creeping toward them instead of drifting away. Then a voice, soft, distant, floating through the mist. "Jackson?" Private Jackson froze. His breath hitched. He knew that voice. His mother's voice, gone for years. "Mom?" His voice cracked as he stepped forward, but Harris yanked him back with a harsh pull. "Stay in formation, soldier." "That's not your mother?" But the voice came again, closer now. "Jackson, come home." His eyes glistened, jaw trembling. "You don't understand. That is her." The squad tightened formation, rifles ready, scanning the trees. Shadows shifted just beyond the light, shapes sliding between the trunks. Miller's voice broke the silence. "Over there." They turned as one, flashlights catching on a figure standing in the fog. Human-shaped, tall and gaunt, but its movements were wrong. Jerky, stiff, deliberate. "Identify yourself," Harris roared. The figure didn't speak. It only tilted its head far too far, neck bending at an impossible angle. The squad fired. Gunfire shattered the silence, bark splintering, echoes rolling through the trees like thunder. The shape dissolved into the mist, leaving nothing behind. Not fallen, not wounded, just gone. Panic rippled through the squad. Adams clenched his teeth. "Sir, we're not dealing with people out here." Before Harris could answer, Doyle let out a ragged scream. They spun toward him. His flashlight trembled against a nearby tree. Carved deep into the bark was a symbol, jagged spirals and crooked lines, glowing faintly from within. "What the hell is that?" Doyle whispered. No one spoke. They just stared as the symbol pulsed once, then dimmed, leaving only raw wood scarred by something unnatural. The fog pressed tighter. The air thickened, heavy in their lungs, dragging at every breath. "We make camp," Harris finally ordered. "At first light, we move again." The men gathered wood, built a fire that spat weak orange light into the dark. They sat in a circle, rifles clutched, eyes fixed on the blackness beyond. But the jungle was no longer silent. The whispers had returned. At first they slid between the trees like wind. Then they grew louder, multiplying, crowding in. Dozens of voices layered over each other. Men, women, children, all speaking at once. Words too broken to understand, but too close to ignore. Miller pressed his hands over his ears. Make it stop. God, please make it stop. The others sat frozen, hearts hammering as the voices filled the air. The forest was speaking. That night none of them slept. Every time their eyes closed, they swore they felt something looming just behind them, close enough to breathe. And when the fire sank low to embers, Captain Harris finally said what they had all been too afraid to admit. We're lost, and this jungle doesn't want us to leave. The fire had sunk low, its glow no more than a trembling halo in the endless dark. Beyond the circle of light, the Appalachian jungle was nothing but shifting black shapes and tangled shadows. Every soldier clutched his rifle close, eyes burning as they fought to stay awake. The fog never lifted. It loomed at the edge of the firelight, white and thick, curling in restless waves as though something was waiting behind it. Miller whispered, his voice barely more than breath. Feels like the fire's the only thing keeping them away. Adams cut him a sharp look. There's nothing to keep away. It's fog. That's it. Get your head straight. But the tension in his jaw betrayed him. His eyes wouldn't leave the trees. Then came the sound. Footsteps, soft, careful, just beyond the glow. The soldiers stiffened as one, rifles snapping upward. The crunch of boots pressing into leaves grew louder, deliberate and slow. Identify yourself, Harris barked into the mist. Silence, then laughter. A child's laugh, thin, faint, carried on the fog like an echo that didn't belong in this world. Every man went rigid, the sound cutting colder than any scream. Jackson's rifle trembled in his grip. That's a kid. There's a kid out there. No child lives out here, Adams snapped, but the words fell flat, swallowed by the dark. The laugh came again, higher this time, and then more joined it. Dozens of voices, playful and cruel, weaving around the camp, laughter circling them like predators. The men spun in every direction, but the fog stayed impenetrable. Only sound reached them, then silence, thick, absolute. The fire popped softly. No one moved. Then the whispers began. At first, they were barely audible, like the forest itself was breathing. But they grew louder, layers of voices, men and women, children and strangers, hissing together in a storm of words too twisted to understand. Miller clamped his hands to his ears. Make it stop. God, make it stop. But it wasn't in the air. The whispers were inside their heads. Doyle snapped. He leapt to his feet, screaming into the fog. Shut up! Shut up! His rifle shook in his hands, finger twitching on the trigger. Stand down, Harris shouted, but Doyle ignored him. He staggered past the firelight, swallowed in an instant by the fog. Doyle! Adams lurched forward, but Harris caught his arm and held him back. Then came the scream. It tore through the forest, raw and broken. Doyle's voice stretched with terror. It rose, cracked, and cut off mid-breath. Silence. No rustle of movement, no body hitting the ground. Just silence. The men sat frozen, every face pale in the dying firelight. Jackson's voice shook. We have to go after him. No, Harris said. His face was rigid, but his eyes betrayed him. He's gone. Miller's disbelief flared. We can't just leave him out there. You didn't hear that scream? Harris snapped. He's not coming back. We wait for daylight. No one argued further. No one had the courage to step where Doyle had gone. The whispers crept back. This time, they spoke names. Miller. The young private froze, the blood draining from his face. Adams? The sergeant's hands tightened around his rifle, knuckles white. One by one, each soldier's name slithered from the fog. Drawn out, savored, as though the jungle knew them, knew their fears, their secrets, their very souls. And then came the last whisper, colder than the night. You will not leave. The fire sputtered, as if something unseen had breathed across it. Shadows stretched longer, the fog pressed closer, the men huddled together, silent, eyes wide, every muscle straining against the dread that clawed at them. The jungle was alive, and it wanted them. The night stretched on, heavy and merciless, the fire dying to a bed of faint coals. The fog pressed in closer, until their camp felt like a single fragile island, adrift in a wide, endless sea. No one slept. Every man sat rigid with his rifle gripped tight, waiting for the next sound, the next whisper. But nothing came. The silence was worse than noise. It was watchful, patient, like the jungle itself was holding back for the right moment. At dawn, the mist did not fade. The sky was a pale, lifeless gray, but beneath the canopy, the darkness remained, thick and suffocating. Harris stood slowly, voice hoarse, eyes sunken from the sleepless night. Pack it up. We move now. If we stay here, we're finished. The squad moved fast, stamping out what little was left of the fire, stuffing gear into packs with trembling hands. No one spoke. Fear clung to them like the fog itself. The march began in tense silence, boots sinking into damp soil, the only sound their own breathing. But then Jackson stopped cold. Sir, look. On the trunk of a thick oak, deep claw marks ran through the bark, shredding it down to wet sap that dripped like blood. Miller's voice broke. That's no bear. That's no animal I've ever seen. Adams brushed his hand over the grooves, his face grim. Fresh, whatever did this. It's near they, tightened formation, rifles up, hearts pounding. The fog shifted again, not drifting, not random. It slid around them in deliberate arcs, circling, closing. Then came the eyes. Dozens of them, pale, yellow, glowing faintly in the mist, watching, unblinking. Miller's whisper cracked. God help us, they're everywhere. The eyes moved, quick flashes in the fog, darting low to the ground, limbs stretching unnaturally as figures scuttled between trees. Hold fire, Adams hissed, breath tight. Wait for a clear. The shriek cut him off. It split the air like steel, tearing against steel, so sharp it made their bones ache and their teeth vibrate. Knees buckled, ears rang. The sound came from everywhere at once. And then the jungle erupted. Figures lunged from the fog. The squad opened fire, muzzle flashes tearing into the darkness. The forest exploded with thunder, smoke, and sparks. Shadows flailed and darted, too fast, too wrong. One of the creatures burst through the mist, finally caught in their sights. It towered above them, 7 feet at least, skin stretched thin across jagged bones, face hollow, except for a mouth that yawned impossibly wide, a pit of darkness lined with teeth that didn't look human. Adams fired point blank, bullets ripping into its chest. The thing staggered but didn't fall. It shrieked again and surged forward. Claws slashed deep across his arm, blood spraying as he crashed to his knees. Harris and Miller dragged him back, firing wildly. Another creature broke through the fog, something clutched in its twisted hand. A helmet, Doyle's helmet, cracked, stained, dragged like a trophy. The men fought desperately, rifles spitting fire into the mist. But for every shadow that dropped, 2 more slipped through the trees. Jackson emptied his rifle until it clicked. In panic, he ripped a grenade from his vest, pulled the pin with his teeth and hurled it blind into the fog. The explosion ripped the jungle open. Trees split, the ground shook, smoke belched out in a deafening roar. For a moment, the shriek stopped, but then the eyes came back. Closer, circling tighter. Miller's voice broke. "We can't kill them. They don't die." Harris seized him by the collar, snarling through clenched teeth. "Pull it together. Move." They broke into a desperate run, crashing through vines and roots, lungs burning, hearts hammering. The jungle stretched endless, twisting, no matter which way they turned, as if it was bending them deeper inside. Behind them, the things followed, not chasing to kill, but keeping pace, letting them run. Whispers slid through the trees, voices curling into their ears, dead comrades calling their names, their own families weeping in the dark. And then came the laughter. Not the faint, childlike giggle from before. This was deeper, cruel, a chorus of inhuman laughter that rose from every direction, surrounding them, mocking their every step. The squad stumbled into a small clearing, panting, weapons trembling in their hands. Harris barked orders through gritted teeth, but his voice cracked with fear. Adam slumped against a tree, clutching his bleeding arm. "We can't fight this. They'll take us one by one." The fog closed in like a tightening noose. The eyes multiplied until there was no space left between them, only a wall of glowing hunger pressing closer. Miller's sob tore through the silence. "We're not getting out, are we?" No one answered. They didn't need to, because it was clear now. The jungle wasn't hunting them. It was playing with them. The clearing closed in on them, the fog pressing tight. The glowing eyes knitting together into an unbroken wall. For a moment, there was only silence, broken by the ragged sound of men breathing through clenched teeth. Harris stood at the center, sweat rolling down his face, rifle locked in his hands. His voice rasped out, steady but hollow. "We don't die here. We fight, we move, and we find a way out." The words fell flat, empty, even to his own ears. The first shape tore through the mist. Harris unleashed a burst, bullets ripping through its chest, but the thing only staggered. Adams, bleeding and half weak, drove a knife across its face. The shriek that followed shook the trees, and the shadow slipped back into the fog. Another lunged, claws slicing. Miller cried out as it ripped across his vest, nearly dragging him down. Jackson slammed into him, firing wildly until the figure retreated. They were drowning in it, claws, whispers, the reek of rot. Harris shouted the order, grenades. Explosions ripped the clearing, tearing apart trees and soil. Fire washed the air. For a heartbeat, there was silence, hope flickering. Then the laughter came back, low, cold, endless. The squad cracked. Miller's sobs cut the air. Adam slumped, blood soaking his uniform. Jackson's eyes darted wild, searching for escape where there was none. Harris made the call. We split up. Shock froze them. "That's suicide," Miller whispered. "They want us together? Apart? Maybe one of us makes it out." No time for argument. The eyes pressed closer, the claws scraping bark. One final nod, and they scattered. The jungle devoured them. Miller ran until his chest burned, flashlight bobbing in his hand. He stumbled into a hollow, raised the light, and froze. Dozens of faces carved into the trees, mouths stretched in silent screams. His light dropped, and his own scream joined theirs as the fog consumed him. Adams limped, blood marking his path. He pressed to a trunk, panting, only to feel heat under his palm. The bark pulsed like skin. Eyes opened in the wood. Hands pushed outward. The tree split and drew him in. His last cry was muffled as the forest sealed shut. Only Harris and Jackson remained. Together, they burst into another clearing. The thump of roaches filled the air, and a helicopter hovered above, spotlight blazing, soldiers waving frantically. "Rescue!" Jackson cried, voice breaking with hope. But the light flickered, the machine blurred, the soldiers' smiles stretched too wide, their hands too long. Jackson screamed as the illusion shattered, the vision crumbling back into mist. The creatures surged forward. Harris grabbed Jackson, shoving him. "Run!" Jackson fled, crashing into the dark. He didn't look back. Harris stayed. He stood tall, rifle raised, fire in his eyes. "Come on!" He bellowed into the fog. "You want me? Here I am!" They came. A tide of shadows, claws and teeth, shrieks splitting the night. Harris fired until the rifle clicked dry, then swung it like a club, roaring into the chaos. His final cry vanished under a flood of inhuman screams. And then there was silence. When Jackson opened his eyes, the sun was shining. The fog was gone. The jungle looked ordinary, alive with birdsong, dew glittering on the leaves. He stumbled forward, broken and hollow. Hours later, rescuers found him, dragged him out, questioned him. He never answered. He couldn't. The whisper still followed him. Even as the helicopter lifted him away, he heard them curling in his skull. "You will not leave." And he knew the truth. The others hadn't died. The forest had claimed them. The report was locked away. The locals only shook their heads. "We warned them," an old man muttered over his drink. "That jungle doesn't let go. It keeps what it wants."